The terminal at JFK was buzzing with chaos, voices echoing in different languages, luggage wheels clattering across the glossy floor. Emily, 26, had just landed from Boston after visiting her parents for the weekend. She was tired, her eyes heavy from the flight, and all she wanted was to get to her small Brooklyn apartment and rest. Standing at the baggage carousel, she scanned for her plain black suitcase, one that looked like dozens of others circling around. In her fatigue and hurry, she spotted one identical enough and pulled it off without thinking twice. Dragging the case behind her, Emily moved through the busy crowd, barely noticing the golden tag that gleamed against the dark leather. The taxi line was long, and she tapped her foot impatiently, eager to get home. When she finally slid into a yellow cab, she exhaled deeply, sinking into the seat. The faint scent of something expensive, cedarwood mixed with amber, brushed her senses, clinging to the handle she had just gripped. She frowned, confused, but quickly dismissed it as leftover fragrance from another passenger. She was too exhausted to dwell on it. Across the terminal, Alexander Hayes, 34, stood in the VIP lounge. Known across the country as a tech billionaire and investor, he wasn't used to waiting for anything. But today, he had insisted on retrieving his own suitcase. He wanted to feel normal, even if just for a moment. As the carousel slowed and luggage thinned, panic began to settle in his chest. His suitcase was gone. Inside it were not just tailored clothes, but also a set of old letters he had carried for years, personal memories he never shared with the world. The sharp click of his shoes echoed as he left the baggage area, calling his assistant in frustration. The loss wasn't about the value. It was about sentiment, something he rarely allowed himself to admit. As he replayed the scene in his mind, he remembered the rush of a young woman hurrying past him, her hair loose, her perfume brushing the air for only a second. It was delicate, floral, nothing like the strong luxury scents he was used to. For some reason, that trace lingered, stronger in his thoughts than the missing suitcase itself. Meanwhile, Emily arrived at her apartment, pulling the case up 2 flights of stairs before collapsing onto her couch. She reached for a glass of water, then finally unzipped the suitcase, expecting to see her folded dresses and worn-out jeans. Instead, her heart skipped. Silk shirts, finely pressed suits, and a watch engraved with an emblem gleamed back at her. She froze, her breath caught in her throat. This was not her suitcase. It was worth more than her rent for an entire year. Her hands trembled as she closed it quickly, fear rising. For the next hour, Emily paced her living room, biting her lip. She considered all the possibilities. What if someone thought she had stolen it? What if the owner accused her? But guilt weighed heavier than fear. The golden tag had a name printed on it, Alexander Hayes. She knew the name, everyone did. He was on business magazines, television interviews, and headlines about wealth and influence. The idea that she had his belongings in her living room felt surreal, like something out of a dream she wasn't ready for. In his penthouse overlooking the city, Alexander sat with frustration coursing through him. His assistant had already started filing a report, but Alexander was restless. He couldn't shake the memory of the perfume or the thought of the woman who brushed past him. He rarely paid attention to strangers, but this time was different. That scent had reminded him of a different time in his life, before his world revolved around boardrooms and investments. He didn't know why it mattered, but he felt as if fate had just played a trick on him. Emily finally took a deep breath, picked up her phone, and dialed the number attached to the luggage tag. Her heart pounded as she listened to the ringing. When the call connected, a deep voice answered, smooth but sharp. "This is Alexander Hayes." For a second, Emily couldn't speak, frozen by the reality of who she was talking to. Finally, she whispered, "I think I have your suitcase." On the other end, silence stretched before he responded, calm but intent. "Meet me tomorrow. Central Park Café, 10 o'clock. Her world suddenly felt like it had shifted in an instant. Emily barely slept that night, the thought of meeting a billionaire twisting her nerves into knots. She lay awake in her small bedroom, staring at the ceiling, imagining the conversation. What would she even say? Would he accuse her of carelessness, or worse, theft? Every scenario seemed intimidating, but the moment she inhaled the faint trace of his cologne that still lingered on the suitcase handle, she felt oddly calm. There was something haunting about it, something that connected her to a life so different from her own. By dawn, she decided she had no choice but to go. Morning came quickly, and Emily dressed with extra care. She chose a modest navy dress, not too formal, but neat enough to appear respectable. Clutching the suitcase handle, she walked out into the crisp Manhattan air, her stomach tightening with each step. Central Park Café was already buzzing when she arrived. Sunlight filtered through the trees, casting soft shadows on the outdoor tables. She spotted him instantly, Alexander Hayes, seated with perfect posture, his tailored suit catching the light, his aura commanding attention even among strangers who didn't know his name. Her footsteps faltered as she approached, the weight of the suitcase dragging behind her. When Alexander's eyes lifted from his coffee cup, she felt her chest tighten. His gaze was steady, unreadable, the kind that could silence a room. For a moment, she forgot how to breathe. "Mr. Hayes," she asked softly, her voice nearly trembling. He gestured toward the seat across from him. "You have something that belongs to me," he said, his tone firm but not unkind. Emily nodded quickly, sliding the suitcase beside him. "Yes, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize until I opened it." Alexander studied her closely, his dark eyes lingering on her face longer than she expected. There was honesty in her expression, no trace of arrogance or deceit, just a woman caught in an accident of circumstance. "You called me," he said finally, his voice lower now. "Most wouldn't have. They would have tried to sell or hide it." Emily shook her head quickly, her hands clasped in her lap. "No, I couldn't do that. It didn't feel right." For the first time since she arrived, his lips curved slightly, almost a smile, though fleeting. "That says something about you." The waiter came, and Alexander ordered for both of them without asking, a gesture that might have annoyed Emily under normal circumstances. But here, it made her feel both intimidated and oddly cared for, as though she were part of a world with its own rules. Silence stretched between them until Alexander leaned forward, his gaze sharp. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emily," she replied quietly. "Emily Carter." He repeated it slowly, as though memorizing the sound. "Tell me, Emily, what perfume do you wear?" She blinked in surprise. "It's nothing fancy, just something from a small shop in Boston." Alexander leaned back, his fingers tapping lightly against the table. That fragrance had stayed with him longer than any luxury scent ever had. "It reminded me of something," he admitted, his voice carrying a distant heaviness. Emily tilted her head, curiosity sparking, but she didn't press. The moment hung fragile between them until the waiter returned with coffee and pastries. Emily sipped nervously, unsure how to continue. "I truly didn't mean to cause trouble," she said, breaking the silence. Alexander studied her again, his expression softer now. "Perhaps trouble isn't always a bad thing," he murmured. The words lingered in Emily's mind long after he spoke them. She wasn't sure if it was a compliment or a warning, but it left her heart racing. They spoke lightly after that, about the flight, about New York, about things ordinary and safe. Yet every time their eyes met, Emily felt an undercurrent she couldn't explain. She finished her coffee quickly, eager to escape the intensity. Rising to leave, she said, "I'll let you get back to your life. Thank you for meeting me." But before she could turn, Alexander stood as well. "Emily," he said firmly, "this isn't goodbye." Emily froze, stunned by the certainty in his tone. People like him didn't linger on people like her, yet the way he looked at her made her believe he wasn't simply being polite. "I don't understand," she whispered. Alexander's gaze softened just enough to reveal something unguarded. "Neither do I," he admitted, "but I can't forget your perfume. And I don't think I want to forget you either." For a long moment, the sounds of the cafe faded, leaving only the two of them suspended in an unspoken possibility. Emily's heart pounded as she realized her life had just changed forever.